to forget like I have in the past. All right, we are live now. So we want to kick off our near end. There are three more chapters after this week, 2 more weeks. So that means we will combine one of those or two of those chapters later. More likely, next week will be chapter 34, and which is the introduction to the me verbs, and then we'll combine the last two chapters, which is a little more uh, about more of the me verbs in the last two chapters. And the me verbs are basically, if you notice, most of all our verbs in the first person singular end with omega, the omega verbs. Well, the me verbs were sort of a precursor or maybe a classical, older ancient Greek that were dying out during the Koine period. And so they still existed, but there weren't as many. They weren't. It wasn't significant in its usage. So there's only a few of them but they are some of them are pretty extensive or pretty significant. And so we'll definitely go through the me verbs, and then you have done basically a year of Greek, right? Greek 1 and Greek 2. So we're near the end. I will tell you that I will have hopefully the end before the end of this week, if not be next week, on the LMS, the final, and it will only cover up through this chapter, chapter 33. I will not cover them, put the me verbs in the last three chapters in the test. And it'll be very similar to the last midterm or whatever it was called that you had, the same kind of thing. But congratulations, you are now dealing today with we're going to deal with the last two moods, the imperative, and we're going to just touch on the optative mood. That way you'll have an introduction to it, and you'll have then gone through all the verb tenses and all the verb moods, and of course the voices. And then that will leave us only the new verbs. So well done, and here we are. You ready?
All right, let's talk.
Always.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Let's talk about the imperative mood. Now, oftentimes the imperative mood is referred to as the mood of command, but that's probably misleading because imperative doesn't always mean command. It can be in what's called an entreaty. If I entreat or if I request from you, normally a command is from a superior to an inferior, right? From God to us, or from your boss to you, whatever. But you cannot command God, but you can entreat, that is request from God. When we get up and lead a prayer, let us pray. It's not a command, it's certainly in the imperative mood, but it's more of an entreaty. It's a request, a desire of sort of volitional will. And so it is in the imperative mood, but not every imperative is a command, is the point here. So while most grammars refer to it as the mood of command, I think I saw one of the grammar called it, what was it? Mood of, let me see if I got it. No, I don't have it. I forget what he called it. It bothers me. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Hold on a second. I know where it was. I know which grammar it was he called it.
But so kind of think about it, not like sovereignty, like I command thou, but more like a desire of the will to be enacted.
Well, exactly, and that's why Daniel Wallace is in his book Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics refers to it as a mood of intention. It's the intent that is expressed, and that may be a command, but it may be some others, and we're going to go through that. So let me get back to here, and we'll go through our PowerPoint slides and try to bring in a few more things. So now I will tell you up front that its function. Well, we've had sort of several different functions when we talked about the participle, and we talked about the infinitives, and we talked about the subjunctives, where the forms would be pretty recognizable and the functions would be a little more effort to think through how they function in the syntax and the context. Here, the functions probably won't be very difficult. but the forms are variable, and at least it, it, it won't be as straightforward in recognizing the forms because they actually are the same as some of the other personal endings, person number, and endings, person number and voice for some of the indicative forms. And when we get to the second person singular, there's some variation, and so it's going to seem a little off, but we'll walk through that and hopefully make it clear. And just know context is really going to be your friend when you're dealing with the imperative. Most of them aren't that hard to recognize, but you just some of them might be a little bit, I guess, confusing to or less recognizable. Let's say. So let's just kind of run through it. So when we talk about imperative and the various tenses that are used, the imperative can be a command, right? Read this chapter, or can be a prohibition. Don't read this chapter, or it can be a request. A request also referred to as an entreaty. Please read this chapter. Let us pray. It occurs most exclusively in the present and the aorist tense, but it's also in the perfect tense, but only, I think, there are no imperfect, no future, no pluperfect, and only two perfects. But I think that's actually so. This is the slide that I got from the beginning New Testament Greek grammar. But I'm pretty sure that in Mouse's, if you go look in the advanced section on page 388, he shows three combinative
Yes.
or perfect. He says there are four combinative imperatives that form the perfect tense, and one of them, este, from oida meaning to know. So in the imperative form of the perfect, Ephesians 5:5 and James 1:19. The other two usages are in Acts 15:29 and Mark 4:39. So his grammar shows four. This other grammar had mentioned two. I believe Mouse's grammar is probably a little more accurate in that regard. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. There is no first person imperative, not in English or in Greek, simply because you don't really technically command yourself or entreat yourself or negate yourself in some form. So anyway, the imperative we find predominantly in the in the present and the aorist tenses. There are, four of them in the perfect, but which the mouse book covers. Now here's where the form can be the morpheme. So remember, morpheme is what sort of connects, or what helps identify whether it's or an aorist has a sigma alpha morpheme, or the subjunctive will use the omega, the lengthened connecting vowel. So the morpheme is really going to give us help us identify its function. And the imperative, there's no first person singular. There is a second person singular and a second person plural. And there's a third person singular and a third person plural. In English, we don't have a third person imperative. And so translating the third person is it's not really hard. We generally say let us or let him. Normally it's a third person, let him or her kind of thing, dealing with action. Let him read, let him do this. But we don't have one in English, so it makes it a little more, not complex, but a little more idiomatic in our translation. So now I'm going to mention a couple things here. So in the second person singular, oftentimes the Mouse's book uses a question mark here, and that's because it's not consistent. It's not consistent, especially in the present versus the aorist. And so oftentimes in the present, you'll see the epsilon that is used. Now, Mouse calls that a connecting vowel, but other grammars refer to it as the morpheme, right? The morpheme, and I do believe morpheme is more accurate. But if in the Aorist, you find the sigma omicron. And so, is that right, sigma omicron? Yeah, I think that's right. And actually, if you go to page, he has it. So this chart is actually on page 381 at the bottom. So let me correct this. Where's my eraser? Oh, I can't do it that way. Do it this way. Okay. Here, the middle passage is a sigma omicron. But if you go to the very next page, and you see that he shows it with the second person singular with the epsilon for the present, and you see the middle passive is actually the omicron upsilon. Let me switch screens. I want to show you something real quick in Mouse's morphology book. You'll both have this book, by the way. Stop share. Present a different screen. And, okay. Okay, Mouse's morphology book. Let me see. It is showing, right? Yeah. Oh, is it moving when I move? Okay, I don't want to do that. Hold on. I can't see what you're seeing.
It's moving around right now.
That's fine. All right. So one of the things he talks about the imperative. This is that blue book, Mouse's morphology.
Mhm.
Okay. One of the things he talks about in here is he shows here the epsilon for the second person singular. There we go. Epsilon for the second. See if I can get rid of that. If that helps. There we go. The epsilon for the second person singular. The middle passive is the sigma omicron, and you notice the sigma. So the epsilon and Lu A. Now that epsilon he calls a connecting vowel. Others refer to it as the morpheme. I think it's more accurate to be the morpheme. I think he does this just more for calling it a connecting vowel, just to make it a little easier to understand or recognize, because we're used to connecting vowel of epsilon. The sigma omicron, what happens to the sigma omicron on Lu? Well, if you remember, that sigma was going to get, I don't know if I can keep that there. Okay, sigma, it's going to get what's called the intervocalic, the epsilon, sigma, and the omicron. So it's not every case, but a lot of cases that sigma drops out. So you get the Lu O, and those two, the epsilon and the omicrons, contracts, and you get Lu O, Lu. And so that's what it says. Intervocalic sigma drops out. So I'll go through the others in a minute. You see a plural, second person plural, tau epsilon, sigma theta epsilon. And if we move to skip contract stems and go down to same thing, epsilon, tau epsilon, and then we get to the aorist. Epsilon and tau epsilon, and in the middle, sigma omicrons and sigma theta epsilon for the middle imperative. I don't know if that helped or not. I thought it was interesting when I was looking at it this morning. Well, I'll pull it up. Anyway, go back to the PowerPoint. It bothers me. That's why I went through that. It bothers me that he has the question mark here, and if you read his text, it's it uses that question mark because he says the second person singular imperative seem to be irregular, and then he's got subnote 2, and it says in subnote 2 says, of course they're not irregular, and see Mouse's biblical morphology or morphology of biblical Greek on section 70, and that's what we were just looking at. And there is some consistency, and but generally we'll see this epsilon and the sigma omicron, although that basically ends up with the omicron epsilon.
Okay.
I don't know why. To me, it made it more complex than it really is. So I was trying to help
I think
simplify
you
it.
did because If that just stood there, I'd probably have a question on it later. So I'm glad you went through
Yeah.
it.
Well, I've always struggled with that very. Why you got a question mark? Just give me the answer, okay? And the very next page, he gives the answer, so it just drives me crazy. But there is some variation with it, and that's why it's got the question mark. So what we'll find in second person singular is typically an epsilon morpheme. In the middle passive, the sigma omicron. We don't normally see the sigma omicron because the intervocalic sigma drops out, and we get the contraction between the two remaining vowels. In the plural, we'll see that same epsilon, but now preceded by the tau. And you notice everything else has that tau. And then you see we have the sigma omicron over here, and we see the sigma everywhere else. So that should help a little bit. The tau, the tau omega is our third person singular. The sigma theta omega is our middle passive form. And our third person plural, the tau omega with the sigma alpha noon, and in our theta with the sigma theta omega, just like our third person plural here with the son. So we have the son and son with third person plural. We still got this eta ending here and here and here. So there are some consistency to it. It just looks a little complex, a little confusing, and so I wanted to hopefully clear it up a little bit. So that's really, for recognizing it, that's really it. And generally context will help bring this out, although sometimes that is not as helpful as you'd hope. When you build the present imperative, right? Present is going to be that imperfective, right? Imperfective, which is more of a continuous or ongoing or iterative kind of process. Because remember, in the moods, which are called the oblique moods, they're not the indicative. The other moods, the subjunctive, the optative, the imperative, these are oblique moods, and these moods, time is not a factor. The factor, the primary factor, is the aspect. Aspect is going to be that imperfective, continuous, ongoing, iterative kind of process. So the present imperative uses the present tense stem, a connecting vowel, and the imperative morpheme, right? And so lu plus the connecting vowel plus the morpheme, and this morpheme, toe, you see, is our third person singular. So we get lu et toe, and that would be third person singular, let him loose, or something of that nature. That makes sense so far? We okay? All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now, in the aorist, again, the aorist is going to be really using the aorist tense stem will indicate not time, because this will be unaugmented, right? We don't have the augment on the aorist, or, well, the imperfect, but we're not dealing with the imperfect. We don't have the augment, time is gone. And we see time goes away when it doesn't go away, it's just not emphasized or function or visible when we get to the oblique moods, the non-indicative moods. And so aorist is going to be that perfective kind of aspect, which is going to be that undefined. It's just a point of an event, and you're not referring to the process, the time, beginning or ending. You're just referring to the event itself that it occurred. So the aorist imperative uses the unaugmented aorist tense stem with the tense formative with the imperative morpheme. And so, as you would hope, there's our sigma alpha for the aorist. Notice there's no augment. That will help us to recognize the aorist. And there's our third person singular for the imperative. And so we get lusato. And so it will be something like these are hard to translate. Third person singular, especially because we don't have it in English. Let him loose. I don't know. I'm not even clear on what it would be. Does he give us an example? He does, I think. Let's see. Those are all first aorist. Okay. So let's see, third person singular. Let him loose. Yeah. And that's really the form. Any thoughts or questions or concerns, guys, in that regard so far?
Seems pretty straightforward.
And for the most part, it is. Let's kind of build on what we know so far. So the present active imperative, right? It's gonna. So we see our second person lu e in the plural ete. Now we see the lu ete. Where else? That other ending.
Second person
Singular.
singular, yeah.
Indicative, right? Indicative, right?
Indicative.
So this can look like a second person singular indicative mood. And so only way you're going to know the difference is going to be context. And in most cases, context will help you be pretty clear, but not in every case. I'm trying to remember the example. I think was it in this book or another book I was reading. Let me see. Yeah, I can't remember. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to determine. I thought it was in this book.
He also does on 383 two other ones that they kind of look the same, like Luo.
You're not supposed to read the book. That's not right. That's not fair.
Lucai.
I
usually don't. This is the first time. No.
Yeah. Okay. There was a pretty good example. I can't remember it now. I may remember it later. Who knows? Probably not. There was a pretty good example that. Here it is on page 382 at the very bottom. It says confusing forms.
Yeah.
Number 33.9, right? So do not be fooled about the second person plural active middle endings, the ete, the este, the sate, the saste of the imperative. They are the same as the indicative. So there's a lot of crossover, and so he just context usually help. But there's some cases where that may be a little hard. And he gives us the next example. Jesus says to his disciple, "Ekete pistin theou." Well, that is he saying you have faith of God? Is that an imperative or is that a statement? Ekete can be indicative, and in that case, Jesus is making a statement. You have faith of God. You have the faith of God, or is it imperative, in which Jesus is telling them to have faith? And he points out, interesting, there's a textual variant where one variant adds a if-then clause. If you have the faith of God, if you have faith in God. I'm not sure, but the piston is in the dative form. The ending of he says luo, second person singular present middle passive infinitive, looks just like the second person singular middle passive ending of the imperative of the imperfect indicative. I'm losing it today. Luso, excuse me. Lu. The ending of a lucai makes it look like the aorist active. He's just pointing out that these endings can be look like an indicative form versus an imperative form, and that would certainly theologically affect our translation. And that's one example of Mark 11:22. Probably went a long way for nothing there. But, so our present active imperative in second person singular, lu'et and lu'ete. So we talked about that to death. Our third person, there's our toe ending, lu'eto. That's our connecting vowel. That's why it probably calls this a connecting vowel. But other grammars call this the morpheme itself. And I guess it doesn't really matter. Although when you go to some other forms, it uses that sigma omicron, and that's why some grammars refer to it as the morpheme, because it's not the same. Versus a connecting vowel. But I don't know. So lueto and lueto san, there's our plural. When you see that san, you know you're in a plural form. And you still have the toe. So lueto, same thing, and now we're just adding the san, and that's our plural form in the third person. It's not real complex, but it's new. and look like the indicative in some case. So present, active, imperative. Any questions?
I was gonna say I was looking because he bring with that confusing forms part. He also has like on 383. There's those little like points that he makes. He says, "See also difficult translation in John 14, 1-2, which it says, 'Do not let your hearts be troubled.'" So I
Yeah.
guess about the context side, is that a command or a request or kind of?
Well, that's on. Okay, it's footnote 3 on the.
Yes, sir.
Really, the last paragraph coming from the previous page. Yeah, where if you have faith in God, making ekate an indicative, and just gives another example of this, John 14, 1 and 2, which we all know, that you believe in God, believe also in me.
Yeah.
So
just makes me think that context is going to play big into
absolutely.
the
That's why translation is both a science and an art. I mean, there's sometimes knowing Greek doesn't give you the answer. Sometimes it makes it harder. In English, someone's already done the work for you, but whether or not they, if you look at one translation versus another, one might make it more of a command, one might make it more indicative. I'm not sure of an example of that case, but let's just go that route, go that path for now. That's because there's some variability or some variability or flexibility in how you interpret that. If I would assume the original hearer would have heard the inflection, that would have made it clearer to them. In most cases, would have made it clearer to them that it's an imperative versus an indicative form. But maybe not. You think about Nicodemus in John chapter 3, when he was confused at how a man could be born again from his mother's womb, when the word again in John chapter 3, verse 5, anothen, can mean from above. And so he heard one thing, but it's possible something else was actually being said or meant. Born from above or born again. Obviously, Nicodemus heard. Now, this is John's writing, so to be real clear, it's not so straightforward because more than likely, Jesus and Nicodemus did not speak Greek to each other. Either more than likely they spoke Aramaic or Hebrew. It's possible they spoke Greek, but not very likely. So John is writing from inspired writing, and in that he's showing some confusion on Nicodemus's part. The question is what did Jesus actually mean? So my point is that unless you're there, you may not really. It's a little more difficult. And if you're not there, even if you are, Nicodemus was confused. And if you are there, you may still be confused. You hear people talking English. Oh, I thought you meant this. No, I meant that. Okay, sorry. So same thing, I think. So. All right, that takes care of present act. Any more questions or thoughts? Okay, present active imperative, present middle imperative, middle passive imperative. In the second person, it's really the sigma omicron that we talked about. Of course, that drops out, and this contracts with the epsilon, and you get the oo. So oo. It's a lot easier to see the middle passive with the theta there. It helps. But it does help to know that this is actually a sigma omicron because they all have the sigma then. And just says the omicron, and these have the thetas. Lu este, lu esto san. There's our plural. San here is with the omega. So instead of having the tau is replaced with the theta is what's happened, right? So anyway, make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the aorist now, it's pretty much the same thing, but we're having our sigma alpha typically included. There's our sigma, alpha's not there. sigma alpha, sigma alpha, sigma alpha. Everything else is the same, right? Now, here's where that variation comes in. This is the Omicron nu for the second person singular. That's kind of why he has a question mark, because it's not that it's a question, it's just that there's a variation or variability associated with it. And the second person for the aorist is the Omicron nu versus the epsilon for the present. And that's what he's trying to bring out. That's why the question mark is there. I don't like it. That's what it is. In our plural, there's our aorist morpheme and our tau epsilon plural form. In our third person, there's our sigma alpha morpheme with our tau omega plural form. Sigma alpha in the plural, tau for the third person singular. Sigma alpha, tau omega, and our son for the plural. So there's a lot of consistency here. It is new and take a little effort time to kind of remember and recognize, but I think the biggest difference is going to be like with this Lusan versus Lu'u and Lu'e. Those don't automatically stand out. This might stand out more as an imperative than that Lu'u or Lusan. Okay? To make it passive form, middle form. Remember, aorist has both a first aorist and second aorist. That first aorist typically has the sigma alpha, and the second aorist generally will not. It uses a different tense stem. I don't remember if there's very many second aorists. There are a few, and I think the book brings that out somewhere. Or I read it another grammar. I don't remember. I got several grammars I read through before I do this. I try to anyway. I don't always. I don't remember. But that sigma alpha helps us to see that it's the aorist form, and if it was a second aorist form, we wouldn't have the sigma alpha, but we'd have a different tense stem. That's supposed to help us. Not saying it does; it's supposed to help us. But we have our second person singular, lucai, and then lusaste, lusasto, lusastosan. There's the same thing. The tau has been replaced with the theta. The tau has been replaced with the theta. The tau has been replaced with the theta. And that's for our middle. It's just a matter of recognizing the forms. Here, same thing, but now we have they, ti, they, to, they, te, they, to, something. I'm not sure what else to cover on these. It's just a matter of recognizing the forms. The theta, eta, we've seen before. That is an aorist passive morpheme. Instead of the sigma alpha, the theta, eta is the or in some cases the theta epsilon. I forget where. I think that's what the I can't remember now which morpheme uses the theta eta. But those are typical morphemes for the aorist, right? Theta eta, theta epsilon, and sigma alpha. So lutheti, luthete, lutheto, lutetoson. Just a matter of recognizing. Okay. So let's talk about the uses. What you're probably familiar with, an imperative is oftentimes a command, right? Diokete tain agapein. You all. This is a second person, right? Second person plural. You all pursue what? Diokete, to pursue. And then hos eke hota akuain, the one who has ears. Here's our ears. The one who has, right? There's our verb eke. The one who has ears, for what purpose? There's our dative form to hear. Let him hear. Akueto. There's our third person. That would be singular, I believe. And so, because it's third person, we often will say let him hear. That's the easiest way for us to do the English form of the third person imperative. That makes sense? You guys okay with that? You see what we're doing? It's doing? Okay. Um, Now, our book covers, and it does a good job with on page 384, prohibitions, and negations, and it covers various forms of prohibition. Let me kind of go through this chart, and then I think this chart, and yeah, this chart, and then I'm going to go to the book for a minute. So, prohibition, of course, would be no. They give you the example here. Me agapeta ton cosma. Do not love. So here's our prohibition. Uh, that is not, and the agapata is there's our do love the world. So do not love the world. This is our second person plural, if I remember right. Yeah, second person plural. We do have a lengthening that epsilon apparently lengthened, and we got to the alpha, and that's why you see the circumflex there. I don't know why. I'd have to go look at it and figure out why that happened. I'm sure there's some contraction or something that occurred. I'm not sure why. Well, that is it. Well, actually, I do know why. That's a contract valve. If you look on page 383, number 33.11, that is a contract valve. So agapa with the alpha, and so in the second person plural, it is. Well, basically, it's just a contract valve there, so it takes the place of the epsilon of the takes the place of that epsilon, and you get that contract alpha. Or actually, I think that's what it is. The alpha and the epsilon contract. I think that's what happens, but I'd have to look it up. Um, and then May, there's our negation. Remember, May is going to be used in the oblique moods. Oblique being non-indicative, right? So the subjunctive, the imperative, and we'll use may and not the oo. Geneste hos hoi apokritai. There's our not, and there's do be, right, from genosko or genomai. Uh, so to be, do not be as hosts. There's our plural hypocrites, the hypocrites. Any thoughts or questions so far? Let's go to the book for a minute and go to. Let me see if the next. Okay, yeah, there's some more in this here for prohibitory. All right, so we'll get to that in a minute. On the book, on page. The bottom of page 384 starts talking about prohibitions, and what it does is it gives you on top of page 385 three different 1, 2, 3 prohibitions, right? The oo used with the future indicative. That's not part of our discussion with the imperative, but just to have the big picture, the oo with the future indicative is just a simple negation, right? You shall not commit adultery, right? Don't do this. Right? Also, the may plus the present imperative. Now, that is part of our chapter here because it's an imperfective imperative, imperfective in present tense stem, meaning ongoing, continuous, right? So this means it's referring to something that the speaker is prohibiting this continuous action. Don't keep worrying. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about your life, right? You shouldn't keep worrying about this. It's not an ongoing need to worry. And that's what the may plus the present imperative tries to bring out. The may plus the aorist imperative, because it's perfective in its aspect, right? It's a one-time thing, or it's an undefined thing, let's say. Excuse me. The speaker's trying to bring out this. Oh, Jake's in here twice. All right, Jake. No. Okay. Did you switch to your phone, Jake? Is that what you did?
No, just Wi-Fi went out.
Oh, okay. All
Had to
right.
go back in. I guess it still picked up on the old Wi-Fi. Anyways,
Okay. So the top of page 385, one, ooh, with the future indicative of simple negation, right? You shall not commit adultery. Don't do this. Number two, the may plus the present imperative is present tense on the imperative is that imperfective, that ongoing, continuous, habitual kind of thing. And so with the may, it's prohibiting that continuous kind of action. Don't worry about this. In other words, don't keep on worrying about this. And so the may plus the aorist imperative is aorist aspect is dealing with the undefined or the perfective aspect, that undefined kind of thing. So don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Right? It's a prohibiting an action that's not really talking about it ongoing, but just prohibiting the action as a whole. And then you get to the next section, 33.18, which I have some slides on, but let me go through the charts or the page here first. And so there are other ways to negate in the Greek. So we went through three, ooh with the future indicative, then we get to the oblique moods, oblique being non-indicative, right? The imperative and the subjunctive and optative. You use the may, so may plus the present imperative using a present tense stem. It's imperfective using aspect. The number three, the may plus the aorist tense stem, which is going to be with the imperative is going to be the perfective aspect. But now there are other ways to do strong negations. One we've already talked about. When you use oo plus may, oo may, it's a very strong negation. In English, you use two negatives together; they cancel each other out. Not in Greek, you use two negatives, the oo plus the may. It's emphasizing the negation. So 33.18 on page 385 talks about two ways to strengthen negation with the subjunctive. So you can use the aorist subjunctive to do an imperative form, right? So the imperative is don't do this. But you can use the aorist subjunctive to do the same thing. May plus the aorist subjunctive says no, explanation mark, even stronger than the imperative. They give you the example, may namisteta hati elton katalusai ton namu e tus prophetes, right, from Matthew 5:17. Do not think, right, that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. That is a stronger imperative than just using the imperative mood. And that's what they're trying to bring out here. Number two, may plus the aorist subjunctive. Again, we've already talked about that. These two negations together. May is what you use in the subjunctive because the subjunctive is a oblique mood. It's a non-indicative mood. So may together with the aorist subjunctive is just a very firm, this certainly will not occur kind of thing. And so in Matthew 24:35, but my words will not really never pass, but will not pass under. Never, I think he puts a note here. Never is a translation that people used to make it more emphatic, but it's really a little bit misleading because it's not talking about time sense. It's just talking about the prohibition. It's not possible for it to pass. So it's a little hard in our English to try to bring that out. And that's kind of what he talks about there. So, okay, all right. So that's the summary from the book. So let's go through the slides. We can also use imperatives to do entreaties or requests, right? You don't request or you don't command God or you don't command your superior, your boss, do this. Instead, you make let's say a strong request, an entreaty, a desire. Optheto, right? There's our second person, or excuse me, third person plural. No, singular. Excuse me. Yeah, right. Singular. See, I don't even remember. Matrix, yeah, singular. Third person singular. Elutato, I think that's from Erkamai. They use a different tense stem. Anyway, hey Basilea Su, Genethe to, there's our to again. To telema su. So let, this is third person singular, let your kingdom come from Erkamai, let your will be done from to be, Ginamai, and there's your will be done. And so you're making this request uh, uh, that it's like you can't call it a command, but it's a more than just a desire. It's a request in the treaty. Let's do this, kind of thing. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done. Also, at dunai bon excuse me boetheson hemim. If you can do anything, please help us. So it's an entreaty. I'm entreating you. Help me, kind of thing. Okay, and this is what we brought out earlier: subjunctives being used as imperatives. So they actually can carry a much stronger form. Now, there is no first person imperative, but you can use a subjunctive in the first person to give the imperative form. It's called a hortary subjunctive. Uh, to exhort a group that includes the speaker. Agapo men, there's our subjunctive with the omega, allelus. Let us love one another. It is a hortary subjunctive. In other words, that's why it says let us. And notice one way to know that. What do we remember about subjunctives? They typically will have hina or other syntactical characteristics to let us know that it's a subjunctive, in addition to that linked in omega. And we would typically translate it to something as that we might love. But because there is no hina in the context or any other form to help us give us that, we can recognize it as a hortary subjunctive. Let us love one another. And in instances, there's no conjunction used such as hina, on, or on. So most subjunctives you'll find, almost all you'll find that. We talked about that when we did subjunctive. That makes sense? You guys okay so far? Okay, subjunctive functioning as an imperative can function as a hortary, first person, typically plural, where the first person is included in the speaker is included in the subject. You can have prohibitory subjunctives. Just like the imperative, subjunctives can work as a prohibitory imperative with the negative may, and the present imperative prohibits the action. The aorist imperatives or a second person aorist that we just looked at is used. So the may is going to be used in the present imperative, and it prohibits the various actions. Loose, may loo, don't loose. Pretty straightforward. The aorist, looson. Here's our first person singular, loose, may, loose, don't loose. And the last form given, may, looson, is the aorist imperative. Yeah. You can have a prohibitory subjunctive. Another prohibitory subjunctive form. Here's some more examples. Kai may, ace, and in that gay case, hemas, ace, perasimo. Do not lead us into temptation. Right? There's the not, the lead into temptation. And on down the line. Okay. So here's the point. Prohibitions can be oo plus a future indicative, right? Don't murder. Right? It can be may plus a present imperative. Now, this note here is not trying to say stop what you're doing. And the reason they're bringing this out is there was some grammatical views for a while that when they use the may plus the present imperative or the may plus the aorist imperative, that it meant something was already ongoing in the present, or in the aorist, don't start something. But that has been rebuked, rebunked, whatever, debunked. And so it does not mean stop what you're doing, nor does the aorist refer to don't start it. But it does mean may plus the present imperative is going to refer to, it doesn't imply that you're already doing it. Is the point, right? That's what it's trying to say. If you are doing it, stop it. But it doesn't imply that you're already doing it. And that's the point they're trying to bring out here. May plus the aorist imperative is undefined. It's the aspect. And it doesn't imply that that it's not trying to say don't start it. It's just trying to say just don't do it. I don't know how to bring that out. I think he brings it out in the book somewhere. I'm pretty sure he talked about that. I'm trying to remember. No, maybe not. I thought I read it in here. Yeah, on the advanced information, page 387 on 33.19. Recent research on prohibitions for many years has been argued that the force of the imperfective imperative, that would be the present imperative, right, has the basic meaning of stop what you're presently doing. Well, they come to the realization that that's not correct. While the force of the perfective imperative means don't start what you're doing, they come to the realization that's not really correct. It goes on, and the next page, I've got it all underlined. The imperfective prohibition is used to prohibit an action. So that's not correct. A prohibition with the imperfective imperative. Look at the second paragraph on page 388. The second sentence there. Prohibition with the imperfective imperative is prohibiting a continuous action. Doesn't mean they're already doing it. While a prohibition with the perfective imperative is prohibiting an undefined action. It doesn't mean that they're telling them not to start it. The neighbor was telling a dog to stop continually barking. That goes up to the previous paragraph. The imperfective prohibition also tends to be used for attitudes and conduct, a general precept. So get that now. In the imperfective imperative, that is ongoing, continuous, iterative, tends to be used for attitudes and conduct, or general precept, right? While the perfective tends to be used for specific commands or specific cases. And so that was something to bring out. That's why this chart says it doesn't mean don't start. It doesn't mean stop what you're doing. The implication is that they're already doing it, and that's not what they're saying. Okay, a little more about aspect. Yeah, we got a few more minutes. A little bit about aspect. Okay, tense form, whether it be present or aorist, does not convey time of the action. We've already highlighted that. And perfective is the aorist, portrays the action from an external perspective, viewing the action as a whole. Right? We talked about the aorist tense stem in the same way back when, without focusing on the unfolding internal details. Right? You just see the big picture. You see the event as it occurs. You don't know anything about its process or its ongoing events. It's just an undefined action. It just happened. The present is an imperfective aspect, portrays an action from the internal perspective, viewing the action as a process without focusing on the end of the action. It's just ongoing. It's iterative. It's continuous. It's unformed. But you don't really know anything necessarily about the beginning or the end. The other things may bring that out. For the aorist imperatives, it's often used as a command, which is what we just read in Mouse's book on page 388. Often used as a command is to be obeyed for a specific occasion, right? You judge him according to your law, right? Prenate is our second person singular. You judge him according to your law. The present imperative, often used to give a command, is a general practice. Uh, don't judge. So, in other words, don't go around judging. This is a subjunctive. Hine me krithete. Don't go around judging, then you'll be in no way be judged. It's a general practice. It's more about the specific or attitude or approach to things versus a specific command. It's not talking about a specific command, don't do this. It's talking about a general practice or an attitude. You shouldn't be so judgmental. You got your own log in your own eye. All right, so that is the imperative, guys. And the point to bring out here is that it's not always a command. It can be an entreaty or request. And the subjunctive in the aorist form with the negation may can also function as an imperative and sometimes even a greater form of an imperative. That's really what we're talking about and how it's used. Y'all okay with what we talked about so far?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit with Damien and Andreas, that ume, it shows that on 385 in point 2, that is like a very strong no with that. I think Damien said instead of like a double negative in English to where it cancels it out, it says double meaning of no.
Yeah, I wish I'd have thought of that. That's. I mean, that's exactly right. And so the point being is there are multiple ways to do a prohibition, multiple ways to say no, and some of these have nuances that are more emphatic than others. They're all no, but some of them are very, very strong no, such as the ume with this air subjunctive.
He also brought up how like people in translation were, because I didn't know this, like with he brought up in the King James how instead of just saying no, they said God forbid. But they're trying to get across the emphasis of the no.
Well, and the book brings that out in this chapter here when Paul speaks over and over again, me genito, may it never be. From genomai to be, okay, me genito, may it never be. And Paul uses that. Luke and Paul uses those. Paul especially considerably. So yeah, good. Anything else? Because I want to close out with the last mood. Now we've talked about the other moods, the indicative mood, the subjunctive mood, the imperative mood, and now we want to bring out the optative mood. Now the optative mood is really not emphasized in our grammar. Let's see why. I wonder why battery's going to die soon, so but I think I got enough time. So the optative mood, if you think about the subjunctive, is sort of the mood of possibility or potential. Okay, the optative is probably less or so in the same way, and it was kind of dying out a little bit because there's an overlap between the subjunctive and the optative. So if the subjunctive was like, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him might not perish, and actually literally, but might have eternal life. They're both in the subjunctive, perishing and eternal life. There is a possibility. The optative does the same thing, but it's a lesser possibility. And so that's kind of what we're going to just touch on here and bring out a little bit. So that way you've gone through all the moods. So far we studied the 3 different moods, right? The indicative, subjunctive, and the imperative, right? Indicative, like a statement, I am loosing. The subjunctive is more indefinite. He might loose, more of a possibility. The imperative is, word command is probably our go-to standard, loose, although it can be, as we mentioned here, entreaty or other things. But there is another mood, and that's the optative mood. There are only 68 occurrences in the New Testament, 45 aorist tense stems and 23 present tense stems, mostly Luke and Paul. And although it's fairly common in classical Greek, it was really being phased out, or by the time of the New Testament, Koine Greek. The most common use of the operative is what we call the volative, which is used to express a wish. I wish I'd known that. I wish you'd have told me that before I did this. That kind of thing. That's the optative. It's more of I desire or I wish or I hope kind of thing. So the two most common, and this is where Paul uses genomai from genoitoa, and in the ame form. These are the most common forms right here. The ame optative is a from ame, and used 12 times. Genoito ta used 17 times. Mostly make genoitoa may it never be, and 14 times by Luke, and once by Luke, but Paul uses it 14 times. I've already mentioned that. And then it's also used in a prayer, benediction, right? May mercy, peace, and love be multiplied to you. So mercy to you and peace and love be multiplied. And this is because it's a benediction of prayer, it's an optative mood, then it's may it be multiplied to you. It's a desire, it's a wish. So it's not a subjunctive in the sense that it is a possibility, although it is a possibility, but this is expressed more as a wish or desire. That's really what the optative is trying to do. Or an abhorrence, right? May genital. So is the law sin? May it never be. And that's it.
I was gonna say, like you said, subjunctive. He might lose. So with the optative, it's like, I wish he would lose, or those kind of things, or may he lose.
Yeah. I don't know if I wish he would lose, but yeah.
I'm saying it's that kind of feeling with it. I may this happen. Please let this happen, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, one is a possibility and one is a desire.
Okay.
So it's a much weaker possibility because it's a desire. I hope this happens. I hope I'm going to heaven. I think I want to go to heaven. I hope, but that's sort of people don't really understand.
So kind of like Paul writing to the churches, I hope to see you. Those kind of things.
Yeah,
desire
there. Just because there's hope or something doesn't mean it's just move. But yeah.
No, I'm saying but with that I guess that's a bad example of. I'm just saying that hope is there with the optative of, I want this to happen. It's
a desire or the wish. It would be. Okay. It's only used 68 times, so it's not used a lot. I don't think I have a list of them somewhere. I remember seeing a list, but I don't remember where it is. So May genital was probably the one that's used most often or most recognized. May it never be.
Yeah.
More of an abhorrence, I hope no. I desire, I wish that this never be. It just can't be, kind of thing. So,
I think that.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that is used. Paul uses that in Romans 6, verse 2. He says, "Me genito." So may it never be.
Yeah.
When he says, "Shall we continue in sin so grace may abound?"
So that's the optative mood, and it's a desire or wish, and should we continue in sin? May it never be. It's a desire or wish that we never continue in sin. It's not in the subjunctive because it's not like we might not continue in sin, but it's his desire or wish that we don't continue in sin. That's not what the law is portraying. So,
okay, I get that now.
Yeah. Jake, you okay?
Yeah,
right.
I'm good. It's a lot to study, but it all makes sense.
Good. So I'm going to try to get the midterm out to this week. I'm not positive I will, or the final, I mean. But I'm going to try to get it done so that I have it out of the way. Like I mentioned, so I think it will cover chapters 20 through 34. or 21 through 34, because I think we went through chapter 20 on the midterm. I'll double check that and make sure you know in advance. It's open book again. I prefer you not. It's good to go through it to see how much you know without the book. But don't turn it in unless you go back through it to say, okay, now let me see what the book says. And, because unless you've really spent a lot of time, you're not going to remember all this, okay? And so the idea is that you understand it, not that you memorize it. It'd be great if you like, okay, I do it so much, I know it. Some things I know really well. Other things I got to go look up. So it just depends on how often you're in it and how much you really spend with it. So we'll try to work on that this week, and if not, it'll be early. I need to get it next week. I'm trying to get done this week, so I don't have to worry about it. So it'll be in the LMS. I will get the PowerPoint, and now we will have quizzes for chapters 34, 35, and 36. We just won't have a final that will cover that as well. Okay, so you still have the quizzes. They're there to help you basically practice what you've learned. Test yourself.
I'm a little behind on my quizzes.
Okay. It's probably Samuel. He was apologizing this morning earlier about quizzes, so it must be his fault.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. Maybe it is.
Yeah, I'm just a good Samaritan over here. You know, whatever payments Jake owes you, I'll make them right.
Well, in that case, I think that's a pretty large IOU.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh no.
Hey, listen, I appreciate it, guys, and I think I'm going to try to have the class. I'll be next Tuesday. I'll be in the hotel. I don't. We'll be in Louisiana, and I don't anticipate that early in the morning we'll actually be visiting anyone. More than likely, it won't be till like lunchtime, their time, or thereabouts. So, if it looks like we are, I'll try to record. But I'm traveling the day before, but I'll try to record that night. But if not, then my intent is to have the class like this live next Tuesday. And then we'll have one more Tuesday, and that's the semester. Samuel, by the way, I don't know that I've got your input for the next summer and fall classes.
I haven't done the fall yet. I don't know if I'll be able to take too many classes. I don't know if I'll be able to take too many summer classes. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Send me a note. Let's talk about it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. I just got to finalize things with the instructors and see where we're at.
I know I for sure am doing Hebrew. In the fall.
Yeah, I think I actually got 4 or 5 people taking Hebrew, which kind of surprises me. But, okay. So it'll be interesting. It'll be nice. I know. I think there's 4, maybe 5 people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
so we'll do it
good.
We'll do a chapter the exact same way, chapter a week, and we'll have Andres and Damien do the Fridays, and I'll do the introduction to the grammar, and they'll pick it up from there.
Is it going to be Bill Mounce's Hebrew?
No, Bill Mounce doesn't have Hebrew. It's I'm probably going to use the same book I have in the past, Van Dyke.
Okay.
But I'll finalize that soon. So.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Dave.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.